Ellen, did you get the invite from Betsy? The policy committee?
If it came in the last hour, probably not, but.
Yes, she just sent it at 4 o'clock. Okay.
Welcome to the Queen Anne's County Board of Education June 9th public work session for the budget. Can we stand for the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome Dr. Salins to Queen Anne's County and our school board. She's been to work roughly for a week now doing various things. I know very, very busy as our acting superintendent. And officially July the 1st will start her 4-year term as superintendent of Queen Anne's County. So welcome, and everybody.
Thank you very much.
And we also have Mrs. Pauls back with us. Janet. Okay, everybody had a chance to look at their minutes for both opened and closed for June the 2nd?
Yep.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Okay, agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented, sir.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Thank you. Okay, Patty, you'd like to start off on our...
Sure. If Mrs. Towers would like to come up, she's going to be presenting to you where we are with our budget, giving you an update on the budget.
Good evening, President Smith, Dr. Salins, board members. Tonight we bring before you our budget draft book along with our budget summary that was emailed earlier this week. We can go line by line if you like. The first thing I want to bring item to your attention would be revenue. The top part of the revenue, you can see that the state revenue for this upcoming year for fiscal year 22 is basically going to remain flat. The only additions that we're seeing to revenue for fiscal year 22 would be an increase in MOE per House Bill 1372 of roughly 1.5 million. And then with going into fund balance of additional 130,000, and then other items, other revenues, we're going to see an increase of 250 for our non-public placement reimbursement. So we're looking at going into FY22 increased revenue of 1.9 million.
1.9, but 250's, I'm sorry, 330 is coming out of fund balance. So revenue from state and county is less 330.
Yes, correct. So if we go down line by line, we'll go through on your summary page here is reductions or cost savings that we went ahead and took a look at. So in this budget proposal before you tonight is the elimination of a support coordinator of 90,000. There's salary savings, lapse retirements, positions, no RIFs, but this is just basically through retirements of 545,000. And then there's reductions that we took a look at of Power School performance, moving that to ESSER at 75,000. Agile Minds, moving to ESSER at 95,000. Moving Math 180 into ESSER at 35,000. Teachers for summer school, 20,000. Tutoring, we're slated to receive a little over 780,000, I believe, in tutoring funds over the next couple of years. So we're going to see a savings in operating of 156,000, miscellaneous instruction at 8,000, and then under the special ed, the next couple is basically allocating the special ed teachers that went to Kerwin, but it did not get removed from the operating budget, so we have to take into account to reflect to actual. So we're looking at assistants reducing to 32,000, teachers reflecting to actual, reducing 283, and then other compensation to actual reducing by 10. The summer school, again, that's ESSER 2, so we can deduct the 20,000. There's healthcare savings that was in addition, in excess of last year at 110, so we're going to recognize that savings this year. And then another possible reduction allocation would be your secretary hourly at 27. So that's just basically the reductions for adjustments to actuals.
On number 4 and 5, when we're going to use ESSER funds for testing, a couple things, would that be sustainable for at least a couple years? That money will be, I mean, I know because it's one-time money that we're using, but it's earmarked for that. But after that goes away, it's something we'll have to keep an eye on to recoup.
That's a good point, because is it sustainable long-term? No. Is it sustainable for next couple of years? Yes, under ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. But then after that, we're going to have to come up with a plan to absorb it back into the operating.
So those should be good for at least a couple years, 2 to 3 years, but it's something
To 24.
I think we should add, when we go through our budget hearings, to keep a close eye on that. Anything that's, going to.
Definitely. The next item is cost of doing business. So you're going to have increases to the budget. The increase would be instruction, the psychological services that we talked about that are non-special ed students at $110,000. You have the special ed consortium contract at $132,000. Non-public placement, need to increase it by $433,000. The furlough day, we have to add back in at $270,000. The wage adjustment for minimum wage, an additional $32,000 in the budget. The transportation, cost of doing business with that is at $133,000. Shredding into all buildings at $6,000. Your travel tracker for athletic field trips for students, $8,000. Your technology annual support increases at $12,000. Licenses for Adobe and Creative Cloud for CTE, $15,000. And then your additions to, there's a placeholder for salaries, a little over $2 million. Full-time assistant at CES, gateway teacher at Sellersville Middle at $85,000, and then your drug and alcohol prevention instructor at $85,000. So on this summary page, you see the cost of the item on the right-hand side, and on the very far right is a cumulative either cost or savings, so you can see the budget go up and down accordingly.
And I think it should be noted, too, that the additions here, there are quite a number of more additions. Obviously, these aren't just the needs of the district. Certainly, principals and supervisors and directors or executive team members have identified other things, but we just can't fund them at this point. So these were prioritized, and so they show up here. But there are probably 2 or 3 additional pages of things that, because there's always needs out there, and more asks for more staffing and such. So just to let you know that those aren't the only needs in the district. Those are just needs that were identified as the highest of priority, critical needs, and you can see then balance the budget that way.
So, and then attached is a budget book. I didn't know if you want to go through the budget book or what else we can review tonight, if you had any questions.
I did have questions on page 6 of the large attachment that we had.
Good.
And I was kind of comparing it to the one that we received, the approved budget fiscal year 2021. But in the one before, there was an accountant in before. So we have the central office administrative personnel slated at the 9.25 FTEs, but there's only 8.25 listed.
Right, because the accountant, I think, was put in as a request, but that does have to be updated, correct?
Okay, so it is just 8.25?
8.25, yes.
Okay, great.
And there's something about the budget, too. The salary for the assistant superintendent or deputy superintendent, how we're going to clarify them, is put over different places in the budget. I had asked that several years ago, so because it's not listed under central office, it's actually broken up over special ed.
Your mid-level.
Mid-level, yes.
And then operations and facilities.
So that's why it's not listed on here. Just brought up that point.
There's definitely a need for an accountant in the business office. I'll tell you that. We are very lean. I'm going to do a personal, a shout out here, especially with all these funds coming down. The staff works very hard and very dedicated staff. It's a pleasure to work with them.
Right on. Okay, can I also ask, on page 12 of 56, during the central office instructional directional staff, so we're doing a 3% increase, is that correct? Is it just because increase in the salaries?
We needed to adjust the actual numbers.
Okay.
So that's why there was an increase.
Okay.
In preparing for the budget, we also take a look at, we actually do the actuals, but then what was budgeted last year and if there's any adjustments for that.
Okay. And then before, we'd had the workforce coordinator, which is not in there now. So do we not have a workforce coordinator? It was on this book here that we were given before, on page 14, we had a workforce coordinator.
Go ahead.
I can answer that.
Sure. Come on up.
We joined together with the other shore counties.
Okay.
And we hired that person with mutual agreement. And we do have, I believe, 17 seats. Don't quote me public, but it'll be 17 that can be in there. But we're working with the other shore counties.
This is the one that was, the commissioners are doing
yes,
the county budget.
absolutely.
Right on, right on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
At some time, we're going to have to absorb that back into the budget. They're going to,
Maybe not.
maybe
We can
not?
work on it. We can work
Okay.
on it, yeah, absolutely.
It is we have $1 million grant from MSDE for the 9 Eastern Shore ESMAC group. And we have stretched that over, and yes, we will have a part of it, but it won't be as significant as a whole position. Okay. And for right now, we're getting, it costs about $5,000 per student. And, but of course, we get paid by the state for, a certain amount per student. So that ends up being that we really are allocating that money to something, but there's still additional funds there, so.
It's okay, I'm asking, I'm sorry.
Yes, please, thank you.
So on page 18 of 55, on the consultants, so there was an increase of 110,000 on the consultants. What was that regarding?
Okay, on the summary page here, if we take a look here, let's see, under cost of doing business, that's going to be for that psychological services,
That was
psychologist
110?
services.
Okay.
I think we have trouble filling
my
that.
gosh,
We
we
have
really-
trouble filling that in-house. And I think we had like 3 or 4, if I'm not mistaken, that we've had to contract out, which
Yes.
has a little, I mean, some of that goes away from the part of it, but we have additional costs because it's contracted.
Yes.
It is very
it's been
difficult
a
to
trouble
hire those,
to hire
and
that.
they're very high demand, and many districts have gone to contractual services.
That was all my questions.
And they were good questions.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
I had a question. Page 16, secretary and clerical for the school's athletic department. Is that going to be split between the 2 high schools, or which school is that secretary?
It's split between both high schools.
Okay, are we going to do the same thing with the athletic director, split between 2 high schools?
No, at this time, we're not pursuing that. It's quite a task and a set of responsibilities for that position, and I don't know that one person could actually do both of the schools. That would have to be their full-time job, and right now we have assistant principals filling that responsibility.
Which for them is like having 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
So I didn't know if there was any possibility of actually having full-time athletic directors.
Well, of course, with the budget right now, we've had a lot of discussions about it this week. I'm looking at Mrs. Pauls because we've had a lot of discussion about that. So if we can wiggle our way out of this budget and can find the funds to do that, but I don't know that I can promise that would happen this year. Certainly, it's on the table. And again, that would be one of those things where you see additions down here where, and we can do this in the future. Sometimes we list additions that, like the next top 10 priorities, that if we did have money, that, these would be the next 10 things we would fund or whatever, so we can certainly look at putting that on here, and that certainly would be a high priority, because it is challenging. They work very hard to make that happen.
And it's falling on the shoulders of employees who have young families. So it's very hard on them.
Very hard.
And just because we're talking about the athletic director, and talking about sports and things, that, as I had mentioned with Ms. Pullen said that if we're going to be doing this clay target shoot and we're going to need to pay our coaches, otherwise they're going to need to get their own insurance. Not that it's a huge amount, but do we think that we can find the monies needed to pay coaches for the clay
Yeah,
target?
certainly the coaches, that's more reasonable amount of money than a full-time
That's
salary.
a couple thousand. I mean, that's a,
3 to 5
Like
usually.
1,500 to
3,
3,000, I believe, per coach.
Yeah, I think we could certainly find the funding if that goes through and we can make that happen, then absolutely. I think think we can support that.
Great.
I have a question on page 13. Have we ascertained about DataWise? Who uses it?
So we actually, yes, actually, I'm going to let you go ahead because you did poll and talk to, via email, every principal and their need. So she gave us a report today.
Most of the principals responded to the email, and there's one that still currently uses DataWise that they find it beneficial in the school system. The other schools felt like non-monetary support would be sufficient going forward. So we're looking at maybe other options for that one school then, and it could be a potential item that we could decrease from the budget.
How are we paying for the DataWise now? Is it through the operating budget?
Yes.
Okay, and I didn't see.
Contracted service,
Okay, it's a contracted service, and I didn't see where it was listed. How much is that by chance?
Right.
11,000, I believe.
No, that's just the consultant, not the
Oh, I
actual
don't-
program.
Actually, I believe
don't
that's
think we have
the
any.
full cost for.
Oh, that's for the full cost?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't believe there's any other additional fees, but point well taken that we might not have to even look at that $11,000 this year. That could be absorbed back into the operating budget for other things, just like we talked about for potentially maybe for those contracts for coaches.
You're telling me only one school out of all of them use this? Is there, is it odds? Is it a Title I school? Is it a different scenario? Is it is it?
It is a Title I school. I think the other schools have, what they've learned over the course of the several years, that they're implementing on their own.
This school just hasn't.
Correct.
But it should be able to. If 90%, if 9 out of 10 are doing it, then you would think the 10th one, it's not like it's, 50-50 or 60-40.
I think basically the way the question was asked is, are you seeking additional supports? And they said, sure, we would like to still have some support for that. And
Right.
the others are saying, we don't really need the support because we feel very confident we can do it ourselves. So I definitely agree with you, looking at why do they need that extra support and how can we make that happen here without necessarily having to contract services.
I get, if it's spread over 13 schools is one thing.
Yeah,
If one
just
school's using
one.
it, then it gets to be, it's $11,000 item, but, we're 460, I find it upside down, so everything like that gets us back closer to where we're supposed to be.
And we have needs.
Yeah.
There are needs.
Oh, yeah, and that's not even counting some of the things we'd like to have, but.
Towers, do you know offhand, the health services, I guess, needed, they asked for CPR mannequins. Do you know if that was put in the budget or?
That hasn't come to my attention. I can
Okay.
certainly look
Just
into
because I would
that.
question why we needed it when you can do CPR online. I'm like, I don't know how you can do CPR online, but you can. So,
Well, that's something we also could talk to emergency services and maybe do a joint program with them, I would think, maybe.
There's 2 or 3 services in this county that does CPR recertifications or certifications, and they usually bring their mannequins with them. So unless you have an instructor within the school system, having the mannequins wouldn't do you much good unless you have somebody certified to teach or recertify.
The thing that comes to my mind is that it might qualify for some grants under CTE because they're very specific on the typical items. So, but it's not in the
okay,
operating budget.
great, thank you.
So that was not for the nurse's office.
It was, just let me find it, because I had it was in our book that we had. Let me find that page, I'm sorry.
And couldn't that be from a grant through the fire school too? Couldn't we
Well,
be
it
getting?
depends on what it is. If it's for CPR certification for your nursing staff, that's different. If it's for your certified nursing assistant program, then those are different mannequins. Those,
Oh, yeah.
those teaching him how to do bed baths, and they wouldn't be doing lines, but they're skills. It's a totally different, because the CPR is just a little head. There's not much to them.
It was a school department health, and they said it was a need. And I also questioned the AED replacements, just because I thought you could can you not recharge AEDs if they've not?
They have an expiration,
Yeah.
and so
Okay.
the patches in there.
Okay, but then, yes, it's CPR mannequins, $10,000. So, and it's under health. Page, I don't know what page, somewhere in the middle.
Well, we can
But it was under a
look into
need,
it.
so I wasn't sure if it had gotten put in
Right,
there.
I think the recommendation from the team who reviewed it was, let's see if we can find grants to support
Okay.
that then.
Perkins funds, maybe even.
On page 27, are we, on the non-public placements, I mean, I know that it was that large of a budget this year. Are we anticipating that it will be that large again next year?
Yes.
Okay.
If not, an additional one, but we're
Person?
not sure. Yes.
Okay.
And we've seen that increase over the last years and
Oh.
one or two.
Again, that was one that we
students.
always underfunded
Yeah.
for years, and then we tried to make it happen through attrition. That and substitutes.
It looks like it's required more than ever.
Oh, ever.
I think too, you're seeing the level of disability of some of our students are significant compared to what they used to be.
When we talk about these ESSER funds, that's going to be monitored very closely, and, you know, you're beating into our heads that it's got to be done properly, because if not, we can, and that your department has to monitor that, so I'm sure, certainly there's more burden put on you. Can any of those ESSER funds have a grant person that actually monitor those things, or that doesn't count?
We would love it and definitely would need it in the finance area too as well. The blueprint coordinator that they're talking about, and it is a requirement to have.
Implementation coordinator.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called an
So that would-
implementation coordinator, and it has to be designated by June 30th.
And
This
they
June
can
30th.
do
This
dual
June
role.
30th has to be designated for the following year.
But that would be,
It
and that
can
could be funded by ESSER.
It could be funded by us.
Because I'm just thinking, you know, we do one thing wrong, we're talking, you know, we're talking about this one grant's over 3 million, another one's coming at 6. I mean, that's 10% of, you know, that's getting up there.
It's definitely, the requirements are very heavy on the monitoring and auditing of the funding that's coming through the ESSER grants. And that person would, sometimes you might think of them as somebody in Ms. Towers, you know, domain, but it's really going to be more of a programmatic person, because they really have to be able to follow the programs to whether
Right.
we're doing the programs with fidelity. And so that's the implementation piece. And so it's really important for us to understand that those ESSER funds have to go for implementation of programs. They're not really for like teacher enhancement salaries or capital projects. They really have to go for, to close and reduce the gap that was created, the learning loss that was created, to reduce that. Those are the funds are for. Now, don't get me wrong, you can hire staff with them, obviously. So if we were to increase our interventions at the middle school level, you know, we could hire an intervention teacher. That would be the math, you know, math 180 intervention teacher. So we can certainly use it for staff, but we have to also know that those are grant funds, and so that, you know, position would be needed to be publicized as this is a 2-year grant position, so that the person would know that, you know, we may not be able to absorb that in the operational budget after the ESSER funds are, you know, done. So.
And the service won't be available to the students after that point. I mean, once there's a service there, people get used to it.
Right.
And then all of a sudden,
Yeah,
you know,
well, and the
grant funded.
purpose is really just kind of like
The
what we do
closure.
with special ed is, you know, we give them the skills necessary to adapt to, so that they, you know, we don't want to keep a student in special ed forever. We're trying to give them, you know, the skills that they
Lifetime
need
skills.
to be able, right, lifetime skills. So this would be something where it would be a 2-year span to try to give students what they need to kind of catch up and to reduce that learning loss that happened over the last 16 months.
This implementation coordinator could be paid for with ESSER funds?
Yes.
So again, that would be a grant-funded 2-year, however long it
Right,
takes.
or we
to
could
use this.
choose to kind of shift responsibilities as someone that we already currently have. So we could have a supervisor that, you know, has X amount of responsibilities, and we say, okay, you keep this subject area, but we're going to take this and disperse it out, and I need you to take on the responsibility of this implementation coordinator. So it could be somebody who, you know, and then we would pay part of their salary with the ESSER funds. We could do it that way, or we could hire somebody exclusively that's not currently on the staff that would be just for the implementation, and with the caveat that it would be a 2-year position.
And I would like to add too, we're very fortunate to have a grant specialist, Jen Bode. She's been with us for many, many years. And the knowledge that she has, she eagle-eyes the grants line by line. And we definitely meet and discuss each type of purchase. And ones that are on her radar, we discuss. So we're very fortunate to have
And you
her.
feel comfortable between the lines.
And that certainly will let the board know which direction that we choose to go for that June 30th deadline.
I mean, this is definitely going to be it's so June the 30th this year, but
We
it's
have to
going to be for at
designate
least 2
it
years.
for 2
because
years.
When's the?
For ESSER 3, though, when does that go? That goes until when?
2024.
24th. That application isn't out
okay.
yet. It's going to be out within the next week or two is what MSD is relaying to us.
And that's the one we're earmarked for roughly 6 million.
6.7, correct.
So it could be a 3-year, or at least go 3 years after we, like you said, we haven't received it yet. Just out of curiosity, because you mentioned other things, ESSER 2 money, have we gotten all that money, or do we spend it and then get reimbursed for it?
The only thing that's come out of there so far, and I'll have to double check, but to my knowledge, it's just going to be for the summer school expenses.
So we get that once we spend it, then we apply.
We ask
I mean,
for
we got it sitting in the bank somewhere, but we don't get it until we
What's the
apply.
net on there? Like, what is the turnaround? 30-day, 45 days after you apply, after you've done the paperwork, 60 days?
Yeah, it does depend, honestly, on what shop it comes out of at MSDE, because some of, our Title I funds can be reimbursed at a much faster rate, almost monthly, and then you have others that we have to wait 3 and 4 or 5 months to get reimbursed. It depends on if it's new. Sometimes it takes them time to set up the accounts and everything, so it really,
It's on a reimbursement basis, so we have to, as a school system, upfronts the cost and then ask for reimbursement and have to wait for
right, but reimbursement comes at various levels
Exactly,
depending
right.
on who it is at MSD. So some are really good about it, some departments are great about it, and some aren't, as efficient about it. But sometimes sometimes we have to float quite a bit of money in order to wait for that reimbursement.
And that's what Ms. Boyd, does she take care of that as well? Does she ensure that we're getting our reimbursements? Is that part of her grant stuff? Is
It's
that
part of
your-
our reconciliation with the grant process, correct? Yes.
Thanks.
So may I ask about Schoology? We're under a 2-year contract with that?
I believe it was to the board last month and it was approved for 1 year.
Okay, so 1 more year. So we will still be utilizing that for this
For
coming
this
school year?
coming school year.
Okay.
And we'll
But
have
those are two
to
funds.
But
really
that's what-
take a hard look at it and,
That's what I was gonna ask.
get some feedback from the staff who's using it to see, and we can also pull utilization reports and see, this year on a regular basis to see how is it being used. And then obviously kind of survey the staff. Are you using it? What is the benefit? Is this product really working for you, or do we need to look at other options? But we're definitely this year going to follow through with that. Ms. Pauls, did you want to add anything else with that? Okay. Just want to make sure we're on the same page. Okay.
I had a question about that as well, because I didn't see it listed here, but is that on page 19 of the big budget, is that part of the Power School? 'Cause I didn't see it specifically listed out in the license agreement.
It is part of Howard School.
Well, I can tell you from a parent perspective with Schoology, it's a little confusing. I know my son has gotten used to it, but to actually see the assignments he has to do, I have to switch over to Parent Portal, and he has to do the same thing on his portal, so he can see what's been graded, what hasn't, and then jump back into Schoology. He can see the assignments in Schoology, but he can't tell if they've been graded. So
Okay.
it's a little confusing when I ask him what's due and I'm checking on him. I now have to jump into another system to see if he did it or if it was graded.
Right.
So from a parent perspective, it's a little
It's more than it's
confusing
not a
to keep
one-stop
jumping
shop.
back and forth.
Gotcha. And that's
I don't know from a
good
teacher
feedback.
perspective if they're dealing with the same
Right.
difficulties.
And unfortunately, I don't know that yet, so we'll have to get a little, get some more usage out of it to see and get some feedback from the staff if they see the same concerns. I'm not sure.
Some of the same because they don't talk to each other as much as we would like it. So we need more training on how, because Julie did come last year and talk a little bit about how to navigate the two systems so that it would be more easy using it, so.
And that there is a difference that I've seen between the 2 semesters of how teachers load assignments. Not everybody does it the same way. So there's an adjustment for the student, figuring out where to find or how to find the assignment if the teachers aren't using it all the same way.
We talked about that today.
Okay.
What additional PD would be needed. Yes.
Because on the parent side, my 15-year-old is my tutor.
Yeah.
He's the one helping me navigate through to figure it out, so.
Yeah, I was going to say, they're usually much better than we are.
He's like, oh, no, Mom, that
we did
teacher's
look
using
at-
it this way. This
we did
teacher
look
does it
at,
this way.
The PD calendar today and talked about, where our priorities are going to lie with that. So obviously, we need to do more training with the platform itself to try to make it easier for parents and students to navigate.
And will that professional development be able to be paid for by ESSER since it's
Yes.
helping with
Yes, it's already, yep,
student learning?
it is
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So that can be done some of our in-service days or something? Get this-
Yes, we have 5 in-service days prior to school, and then just a couple more during school, and we were actually just starting to plan out what those days were going to look like.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions of Jane right now?
Well, are we at a point, sir, that we can vote on this budget? Are we confident enough with all the answers?
We can. I mean, I think it's a doable budget. I don't think anybody is completely happy with everything. I think we got to keep in mind, we're probably 460,000 using of one-time funds for reoccurring cost.
460? I only see 330.
Well, you got 2 on number 4 and 5, ESNR funds that we're using for testing, which qualifies for ESNR, but, we would have to absorb that at some point in another year or two. I think it's prudent to do that now, but I think it's something we got to keep in mind that you look strictly at this budget with all the commitments we're making to everything. There's some money that's at a year or 2 years down the road, we're going to have to close that gap. And I think it's, we've had this issue in the past. We'll probably have this issue in the future. But I just, and I think our board understands this. Jane's done a good job of explaining it to everybody, but it is, it's not like if this budget just stayed like it is, next year we're going to have an issue, and the following year we're going to have an issue because we're using one-time money.
Well, we've always had that issue, sir. But I'm very excited the fact that we're not going into a RIF. I have to say thank you very much to Ms. Towers and her staff, because I am grateful that we're not having to do a RIF.
Oh, yeah, we're getting our furlough day back. I mean,
Yes.
we're buying our furlough day back that we had to furlough teachers last year. We're not going to have to do that this year, it looks like, with this budget.
No increase in health costs to our staff.
Yeah, there could be our insurance looks good, coming in good this year.
And still being able to cover the increase in the minimum wage and be able to hopefully give everyone an increase in
Meet
their
our
compensation.
obligations that when good, what we've done, and so I think it's a good compromise. Everything. It's just then we discuss this. I have no problem bringing it in front of the board unless we do meet next
Steve?
Wednesday. We could have it all. I mean, is there any little tweaks you're going to feel comfortable and uncomfortable with for next week? As you said, any certain numbers might come in at the last.
We are still waiting for the final numbers from the state. We still have the draft numbers for state aid. Hopefully we'll get that this week. And I just need direction. Are we going to leave data-wise or just go ahead and reduce that allocation?
I say, I mean, this budget's in there. We can always take it out as we go through the year. You said one school out of.
One school currently that I know of is utilizing it.
I would refer that to Dr. Sellens.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna
or
say,
Janet, or whoever's going to have to make
Ms.
that
Falls,
decision.
I mean, I would recommend we take it out because I really think that we can support the one school who needs the support. Okay, so that would be my recommendation, is to remove that.
So then instead of using 330, we don't have to use 319.
Yeah.
Well, actually, leave the 330, and if we don't need it, it can always just go back into fund balance.
Right, it would just be absorbed back into the
Exactly.
operating budget.
We
Yes.
can, but if we take it out, it's out. I mean, if we're going to take it out, we're not going to spend it.
No, we remove the data-wise line item, yes, but still leave it at 330 up here. Because again, if her numbers don't come back from the state, we'll have it covered. If it does come back from the state, we can always put it back into fund balance. It's just a cushion. Sorry, I mean,
I
I'm
just
just.
soon have it out if we can, but I'm the only one of 5, so I have no hard feelings one way or the other.
I'll be glad to take it out.
The big thing is, Jane, our state money, is it going to be close to what you think it is? I mean, do you think it's going to be any, I mean, if it's not going to be a major change, and if it is, then we have to, we'd have to redo our budget if they come out real different. I mean,
Right.
and we're not the only ones probably in the state.
Right,
doing
everybody
it.
would come unglued.
So I have no problem
I
on
think
passing
it-
this budget this evening with everybody knowing that, if you find out that we're off too much with the state and they come back with incorrect numbers in our view, then we'd have to, we do it.
I'm only bringing this up, sir, because next week at our work session, there are several items that need to be purchased for the next school year.
For
and it-
22.
Which need to be done. We had already put off 2 or 3 items for the work session with the mindset that we would hopefully be passing this tonight.
All I need is a motion.
And remember, if you keep that extra money in there, then that could cover those possible coaches for your team.
Okay. Okay, you've got the budget in front of you. We've discussed it. I have a motion on approval. To adoption of the FY22 budget.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Ms. Wright, could you do a roll on this one?
I definitely will. Benelli?
Aye.
Is it yes?
That's a yes.
Okay, thanks. Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Harper?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Brissette?
Yes.
I have 5 in the affirmative.
Okay, the budget passes for FY22 on a 5-0 vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Towers.
Thank you, Jane. Okay. That ends that. Our next school board meeting is scheduled for June the 16th. We have a work session. Then our first regular meeting will be July the 7th with a work session on July the 14th. Do I have anything else? Do we go in closed session?
Make a, oh,
Sure. Pursuant to the general provisions of Article 3305 and 3104, I move for the board to meet in closed session to consider matters that relate to negotiations or to perform an administrative function.
second.
All those in favor? Aye. Ayes have it. Thank you. Yeah, take a second.
Did you get it? I'm not the only one.
No. No, that was the case. You wouldn't get it. I don't know if you've done any of them, have you?